Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with more Cosmonarchy. Entering in to the Purgatory once more, Veeq7 continues to take on Hamster. And the Zerg section of the song was playing, so that means Veeq is clearly going to 3-0, right? He is in the bottom right, Hamster in the top left. These have played out the exact same way, same spawns, you know, but one of the things that I have noticed, obviously, is that so far, Veeq has won the first game within, like, the very end of the early game, you can call it. The second game was much more of a rush, and, a little bit all in, a little bit chancy. And again, if Hamster had built Zealots instead of Legionnaires, I really think he would have repulsed that attack, held in that respect, and would have been in a fine spot. But Veeq is harvesting Vespene, so he is probably not going for a pool first. Meanwhile, Hamster is putting his pylon in progressively more, I guess you could say, defensive positions, right? At first it was here for maximum build space, then it was down here, and now it's here. So he's gotten more and more defensive. It's kind of interesting because I don't really think that helps him against most threats. The only time you would want a pylon around the Nexus is versus air units, so you could put down, or anti-harass, like anti-drop or whatever. So you could put down wardens in your, adjacent to your harvesters. We do actually have a very fast Hydrith, though. That could be a complication. Interestingly enough, Veeq hasn't scouted with his worker in, I don't think, any of the matchups so far. It's something I didn't really put conscious thought into as I was casting the first two maps, but it feels like he scouts with his attacking unit, which is a little bit greedy, but isn't necessarily a bad thing if you think you know what your opponent is doing. I do think, though, that it's a little bit risky, right? We have some initial tickling in action. Remember that Protoss, of course, have flash shielding in Cosmonarchy, so after 2 seconds of not receiving any damage, they will happily heal their way up. Second gate coming as a response to scouting the Hydrith, and a Legionnaire is indeed on the way. Last time, you guys may remember, that Hamster went for a 1 Legionnaire Nexus, which is, I've never seen that before, but it's a pretty Chad move. The Legionnaires are 75 minerals. Obviously, they move a lot faster than the other units that are out of the gateway. So they can indeed scream across the map and, do some early harassment. But actually, because it's a Hydrith first, before the hatch, some of the initial units, we got an Izira core, we got a Hydralisk coming. This will be able to riposte any sort of attacks from a single Legionnaire. You're not going to be able to compete with like a Hydralisk or an Izira core with 1 Legionnaire. In fact, he's actually pulled back and waited for a second one. So we'll see what ends up coming from there. Something to point out for anybody who's coming in from Brood War, or even just not having played this game, is that the rally points do indeed dictate the spawn position. And so, as you can see here, the Scribe is going to spawn on the left-hand side of the Nexus because the rally is toward the bottom and left. Edge detection is a little bit finicky, but for the most part, that's what you can expect. Now, the Scribe is going to come over here and pocket behind the mineral line. I don't think we're going to see a Warden rush, but or a proxy, or whatever you want to call it now, because it's not really much of a rush now, and bordering on the 3-minute mark. But he might be able to at least confirm the hatch. You really want to know that your opponent is expanding in Cosmonarchy, just like in StarCraft 1 or 2, because it really helps you figure out, like, oh, okay, where are they electing to use their early resources? Are they trying to get a lot of military tempo or something? But it's 3 gates, and with a embassy coming before the Nexus, now I think this is kind of the first time his scout did end up dying there, but Hamster has essentially confirmed that he's going to be in a situation where he does not have the Expo Tempo. I do like Expo Tempo as a term, by the way, but, the Eco Tempo, I guess you could call it. He's going to go for a Nexus now, but he's 200 minerals. Again, he's got 3 gates, and it looks like all 3 of them are going to be idle for a time, with more and more resources being put into worker production, thanks to the second worker production queue from the Scribe. So we are actually going to see even workers for a little bit of time here, but with the extra hatch coming online, I don't know what Veeq is thinking at this point. He doesn't seem to want to move out. He does have a kind of like small army. This Protoss army can pack a punch. There are Zealots mixed in with that. Nexus coming down now. Scribes restarting. We'll see what else Hamster wants to do. But the crucial thing is that neither of our players are building more military units. So this could be a pretty big blow for either one of them. Now, it's not a very, it's not an attack that's, I would say, all coordinated and together, but he still pops 1 Hydra and 1 Izira core, now forcing the workers to pull back into the safety of the main, at least relatively. It's going to be safer. We've lost the Legionnaires for the front line, but we do have 3 Zealots, which obviously are going to be a lot meatier, beefier than the other options. And here comes a Drakiden. This Droleth is almost certainly going to end up getting popped. No, it doesn't look like it. Veeq now sending his units down, fighting with the workers. This is really really risky. Remember, there was worker parity for just a moment there, but as it currently stands with the Izira cores down, it looks like they might have done enough to allow the Hydras to pick off the Zealots. The Hydras completely ignore the armor of the Zealots in pretty much all standards, so we're big fans of that. If you're a Zerg player and you're fighting against a Gateway army and you get to a critical mass of Hydras, you're going to be happy with that particular interaction. But hey, that was, good pressure. Good for Hamster to recognize that he has a window of opportunity to push out, because he scouted that another hatch was going down. He knew that obviously there was a second one coming in the main, I guess he could suspect. I don't actually know if he scouted, but he knew that the tempo might have been a little bit slow in the military because it was tech before hatch. So now we're going to have some static defense set up. We have Hamster at a 7-worker advantage. He's got 3 working production queues, although, of course, right now he's going to go for a Witness to stall out the initial push there. And he's got a lot of Vespene, too. It's going to be an Ardent Authority. I'm always a little bit interested in what people do, because in Cosmonarchy, for the average structure that you build, especially as Protoss, you're going to be looking at 5 units per structure. For Zerg, it's about, on average, 3 units available per tech structure, with the Hydrith Den and the Pool being 2 units until you evolve them, and then you get 2 more units. So that's sort of how you can conceptualize it anyway. And obviously for Terran, you've got 3 units and then you put an add-on down, or maybe you have an outpost. We call them outposts, where it's like the Mantle or the Apothecary, where it just gives you 3 units. Although the Apothecary will eventually give you 4, so that's not exactly a hard and fast rule. But again, this is in the law of averages. Talking about averages, we are going to be talking about somewhere between 3 and 5 units per structure that you build. And we do have an Envoy coming, and that kind of signals to me that this is going to be an Acantor. So all that preamble, all that blabbing about the number of units that you have, there are 5 units out of the Ardent Authority. The Witness definitely was spotted here. You can see Veeq realizing, okay, you're scouting on me, you're spying on me, I can tell. Zorki's Shroud comes, Pool comes. Now, if you go for Shroud, is it going to be Lekizalisk? That's the concern. And the other thing is that Hamster, if he clicks on these eggs with detection, you can see the progress bar and the unit ID icon here. So he can see that it's a Lekizalisk coming from that particular egg if he chooses to do it. And, he can also, obviously see progress bar in general to see how far along you are. Now, it looks like Hamster is actually going to be, yep, there's the Acantor right on schedule. Technically, it could have been an Architect drop, but you probably don't want that versus Zerg. That might be more of a Terran thing. And it looks like we are going to see a faster third for Hamster than for Veeq, who is a bit more content at catching up on workers, which he has done, admittedly. So we're still waiting for Hamster to actually throw that down. Meanwhile, just adding more and more workers to the natural, trying to saturate that. Generally speaking, when you count the workers, in here you just subtract 3 because you got 3 on the geyser. There's 23 on minerals. A slight oversaturation, right? Because we're talking about 8 mineral fields. You multiply that by 3 for your maximum saturation. So 24. So he's 1 worker away from absolute full effective saturation, but you stop getting maximum efficiency out of your workers after 2 units, 2 workers per node. So, when you're talking about 8 minerals, 16 workers is maximum efficient saturation, and then every other worker that you add onto that is diminishing returns. That's the best way to put it. It's probably a more graceful way to describe it. Now, this Droleth moving out to see the pylon in the bottom right, cheekily left there, echoes of the first game that we saw between these 2 players, also scouts the Acantor, but there is no reaction. Veeq is actually going to end up losing some workers here, almost certainly. We've already got a couple of workers. Yeah, there's 3 worker kills. Keep track of it now. So it was 37. Okay, they're stacking up. It looks like he's struggling, Veeq, to get away from the death trap that is this. There's the big unload for a nice extra 3 worker kills. Gonna force Dodgeball onto the Hydralisk. We got another one over here. That was a huge hit. I think that was something like 6-7 workers. Down to 14 kills on that Acantor. Zet's clogging up the ramp. Units that are definitely not going to help with the Acantor or the Envoy, struggling to make it up. And meanwhile, behind this, Hamster is starting that Nexus, adding an engram to his 3rd. We do have more and more production coming. Now, we did see a huge amount of investment into Vespene with the 8 Lekizalisks. This could be a pretty big deal. He gets the Scribe, still not gotten rid of this pylon here, and diving back in for even more worker kills. This is just brutal for Veeq. He's pulling his forces down. He's gonna see if he can make it happen. There's the scoop up. He does have some anti-drop defenses, but look, we're down to 18 workers. This has totally ruined Veeq's chances, I think, of being able to make it through. And yeah, here we go. We're finally gonna have the Lekizalisks come up. Okay, consolation prize. He kills the Acantor. It will not help with the defensive push here, but he needs to get such critical damage. I'm talking destroy the the 3rd maybe before these defenses come up. I don't think he can because the engram's just about finished. And on top of all of that, he's going to need to make sure that there's no possible backstab potential. Hamster's got a lot of production up here, very, very safe out of the way. He's adding more defenses to his natural. He's got his forces kind of set up in the choke over here. Pretty reasonable surface area for an initial push. This actually could get scary for Hamster, because if Veeq doesn't win the game right now, I feel like he's almost certainly going to lose. Let's see what happens. We do have the Lekizalisk waiting for them to burrow. There is still a Witness for detection, so the Wardens can hit them pretty hard. The Architects are starting to get overwhelmed. These are very expensive units, and they need a peel. There's the focus fire from the Hydras. They might be able to get the next one. I'm not 100% sure. It doesn't look like it. There's too much other forces there, and it even falls back anyway. So there you have it. The admittedly, a lot of workers did die, but we're still talking about Hamster on double the worker count. His witness is somewhere. I actually don't know where. It looks like it was pulled away at some point. There it is. Finally found it. And yeah, the Nexus is definitely doomed. So, okay, Veeq did snipe one of the bases. He's got a base in the bottom left. I don't know what that's about. Still never cleared out the pylon here. Looks like he's going to send those 3 Hydras off to do it. And his Lakizilisks reinforcements, or whatever you want to call it, never ended up making it in. So those have to tuck tail and run away. And what's the reaction? It's just workers coming out for Veeq now, trying to, catch back up, admittedly. He's got, 8 Hydras. Maybe he can try to use a combined force with the Lakizilisks. They're about to get sniped again. Veeq's busy trying to macro up, it looks like, and where's the reaction? He's, okay, now he's trying to pull them away. That one's almost certainly dead. Yep, there we go. And with only 2 of them and the Hydras, sure, you can try to hold this ramp. That might actually confuse some of Hamster's units. You can see him pulling back here, frustrating his pull. For some reason, he has 6 scribes with this army. There we go, putting them back up to the natural. And unfortunately, the Lakizilisks does take a couple of hits from that Architect. One more Dracodon hit, and it would have been totally killed. It feels like really the writing is on the wall. 6 Hydras in production. I don't really see how Hamster is going to be held off by what Veeq has right now. These 2 circuits could be good, but he never added any more. And the Architect obviously outranges it. So the Lakizilisks, they were kind of in a no man's land when they burrow. You can't really unburrow in this situation with all of these ranged units. Hydra's trying to attack from a relatively safe position here. Maybe see if they can pop some of the Dracodons. One of them does go down, but it's not a cost-efficient trade. The Kagrant trying to remorph desperately will eventually be sniped. More and more Hydras streaming out. Really, he wouldn't. I feel like he needs Zeths or something, because yes, there's Positrons for splash, but if you can get a good flank on them, there goes one of the Positrons. Trying to buy time for the Kagrant to remorph. I feel like this game's just about over. Ladies and gentlemen, I think Hamster is going on the board. Admittedly, he's got a lot of float behind it, but yeah, there's the GG. Now we got it. Second Architect arriving, and Hamster gets on the board. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, Hamster will be starting on the bottom right. Remember, we've got 5 games to go through over here. Veeq in the top left. Is this snow? It is. Is this orange? It is. There we go. We're back, baby. We're so back, dude. We're all back. We're all going to make it. Ladies and gentlemen, I am expecting a good, clean macro game out of this one. I have no idea why I would expect that after how some of the past games have gone. But I guess what I'll say is that both of these players trying out different strategies, enjoying playing against each other. Hamster obviously struggling a little bit versus Nablime in the previous set that we casted, but is here in style and on the board. Looked like he kind of outclassed Veeq with the Acantor drop. I don't really know what to make of that, because it's something that obviously Veeq will probably leave a comment about explaining, but it did feel like he didn't react to the minimap dot, maybe didn't expect Hamster to go for something like that, and there's so many units in the game that, how do you remember all of them? Gateway coming down as per usual. Fast pool this time around for Veeq. Kind of similar to game 2, if you guys remember the 4-minute game or whatever. We'll see if similar situations show up. Maybe Hamster will respond a little bit more to spec, so to speak. But, do you remember Acantors? Do you remember that the embassy gives you the envoy? Of course, Veeq remembers and knows all of these things. He's the project co-author, right? But you could even say crow-author, actually, but that's both of us. So, whatever you want to call that. But the main thing I would say is when you have an embassy, you can always pivot to transports. You always want the embassy because of the workers, and of course the witnesses. So when you know that there's a witness, you know that there's a potential for an envoy, but Veeq never rescouted his enemy. And I feel like that's something that is probably one of his weaknesses, is that, if he doesn't get the game going in a right situation for him early, if he doesn't take tempo early, he might not be able to re-scout. I do think, I seem to remember him using witnesses, actually, funnily enough, in his Protoss games. But now that he is Zerg, he might enjoy a more flexible early game and being able to maybe flow builds out better than what Hamster has shown so far, as it looks like he is going to be going for a Nexus. Again, trying to keep tempo with the Zerg is always a good thing. Quasi's coming out here by just the pair, and then we are going to have 2 Zeths coming out as well. I thought I just heard an unburrow sound. I'm not sure what that was. Zealot first. So that's obviously going to be much better versus what we have here. With the Scribe dying before it can get out this far, I mean, I'm sure Hamster saw the Nexus, but or the Hatch, but he might worry that, like, oh, is he sending his units across? And then maybe he plays defensively. If anybody knows Brood War PvZ, the first Zealot can be very, very damaging and force out, a lot of combat units and stuff. That's absolutely true. One Zealot can kill everything that you see here, right, including the other Zeth. So it's really a question of, do you want to risk that? So the Zealot is going to be spotted. Second gate spotted. I don't think the Zeth spotted the Nexus, so it might just go back and rescout. But right now it's just doing a little bit of harassment. The Dragon wants to make short work of that, of course. So there's the burrow. Yeah, not quite. And yeah, so Veeq might be, like I was saying, enjoying the flow of Zerg, maybe, and definitely like some of the high concept tech that you can get access to. But so far, in the games that we've seen at this moment, it does seem like he might be reeling from the lack of witnesses, not being able to spy on your opponent quite so well. But yeah, despite that, I do think that we are going to end up seeing a pretty solid match. Looking at this, it doesn't look like either player is getting ready to, pass out and fall over just yet. So I'll take this opportunity to tell you guys that you too can join Cosmonarchy. You can join the movement, the revolution. We've got people coming in from Brood War, Herbmon, Art of Turtle, Diggity. We've got all sorts of people who are going to be joining us, not just for this upcoming invitational, but just in general, just this community, just this whole project that we've got cooking. Hope you guys are as excited about that as I am. Another scout. Hamster's been pretty good at sending rescouts. Unfortunately, he's not really been pretty good at, like, sending them into the base or maybe putting them in different spots. I do like when he puts, like, cheeky pylons in places to block extra expansions. It doesn't look like Veeq is going for anything like that right now, although he does have a lot of minerals in the bank. We'll see what he ends up wanting to do. Starting to slowly build up. An embassy on the way. Of course, more scribes coming in the natural. Zealot is going to make its way across. It's been all Drakons and now a third gate. So this one has been a little bit more economic, I think, from both of our players, particularly how Hamster has taken a while to get up to that third gate, and we are going to see a Zorkis pair with this. So 6th sense, perhaps, Veeq realizing, I should say 7th sense with that name, realizing that his opponent is likely going to continue with the gate swarm. And if you can get more Lakizilisks down, you can definitely deal with things like Zealots, right? That's just like Lurkers and stuff. What you just saw was Veeq cancel an egg without it blowing up. Oh my god, yeah, Zerg OP, guys, you can cancel the eggs. Pretty intense, pretty insane. Zealot scouting, no third. Is it going to move all the way over? Yeah, it looks like it's going to be moving into the top right at some point. That will confirm that, indeed, there really is no third base coming. You can see here, Hamster's intent is to use tech. He's got a witness coming. It does feel like his worker count has really, really fallen, and he hasn't done any harassment, and this is kind of the danger that you can get into when you're facing Zerg. Going up to 4 hatches with this one right here. 3 hatch production does afford you not the most amount of military, as you can see, but you can afford to throw down like 2 circuits or whatever and still have a pretty strong economy, still have a pretty strong situation here. And I think that's entirely because of a general lack of pressure. But Hamster's planning something. He's hidden most of his Dracodons up here up the ramp. That Seth didn't get a good scout on the number of workers over here, I don't think. A Zealot still just watching for a big army move out, Witness moving across the map. If he just moves across the map with all of his Dracodons, is he going to be able to pressure the situation with the Witness versus, that's going to reveal the Lakizilisks. Again, those are basically Lurkers, but they the spines return back to them. Now, obviously, like a lot of the stats are going to be very different, but generally speaking, you can get hit twice, basically. Pylon defensively in the natural. Hamster got a lot of resources over here. Going to opt for a Grand Library to go along with this and maybe queue up some more Dracodons. We'll see. He thought about something, but it looks like he's saving his resources a little bit more. Just adding another round of scribes. We do see a bit of a move out fomenting over here, and this is another thing. When you're up against Zerg, I think you almost always want to keep tabs on what they're doing and probably try to pressure them a little bit. The Zealot reactively moving back. I'm sure that Veeq would have seen it. Yeah, there you go. He's going to spot it here, lose a single Zeth for his troubles, and now the Zealot is going to start to walk away. I do think that Veeq would have seen that shimmer as well, so he should know that the Witness is on operational. Here's the Dracodon move out, trying to take control of the hill. Lakizilisks, unfortunately, leading the charge, not where you want them. And there is no Vornath pond, right? So we don't have any ability to really catch these Dracodons. There can be a lot of incessant kiting back and forth. We should see a focus fire onto those Lakizilisks. So it looks like he just wants to fall back and maybe do some attack moves on his way back to what you might think is safety, but there's really nothing over here. So this is still pretty scary. But it looks like maybe Veeq just wants a bit of a contain. With the Grand Library done, we might see Cantavis. That's the High Templar. Obviously, you might have wondered where Storm was. Well, it's very different in this game. but it still is pretty effective against denying contains and just trying to deny areas in general. Here's the seizure, trying to jump straight in on with all of the Zethra cores. And you can see there's not really any crowd control over here. We still don't have anything coming out of the Grand Library. Finally, a Cantavis gets queued up. Almost 1,000 minerals in the bank. Hamster definitely struggling to do some kind of reaction. This Zealot not blocking the third. So Veeq will continue to produce and get a little bit of an economic lead. And this is an interesting contain. We've never seen something like this before exactly. But I've also never seen this particular army complexion versus Protoss, or versus Zerg as Protoss. Now, killing one Lekizalisk seems to have made Veeq pull the trigger. He doesn't, his herd is being thinned as far as the Zeth is concerned, and the Witness still spying means that 2 of the Lekizalisks are all that remains. We have reinforcements streaming in. That's like 4 more Lekizalisks along with all of the Zeths, but there are still so many Drakodins, and the Cantavis is done. We need to watch out for Psionic Storm. It's not being cast. There we go. That's going to be a pretty big hit on top of where a Lekizalisk burrows. A lot of workers potentially could fall here if the Lekizalisks get any further. We do indeed have that. We need another Stormcast, but it's not coming. And instead, the Scribes aren't even moving out either. This is actually going to cripple Hamster's economy, it feels like, because he didn't evacuate any of his workers. He's continuously getting pincered by the Lekizalisks moving up. But his Drakodins have held strong, and unfortunately, his Cantavis might end up falling over here. Yeah, there's only one Lekizalisk left, but it's a swarm of additional Zeths. It feels like Amaranths needed to come out of this Grand Library a lot sooner. More and more Drakodins. There goes the Cantavis. It is killed by Quasis. And as of right now, the number of Zeths charging on through is going to be too much, I think. He's certainly not going to be able to save this Nexus, but while I say that, it's going to be a while. No, okay, there's the focus fire. Even leaving one of these Drakodins up for good measure. And now we have the withdrawal. So, Veeq is getting the Vornath Pawn behind this, also going for the Hydrath Den. Maybe add some Hydras to flood in here. The Witness stayed alive, obviously, during that. There was no Avaleth for any sort of quasi-snipes of it. It takes a while for the Quasis to do the sufficient amount of damage as well. But, you know, you're kind of left in a bit of a shambles in this situation if you are Hamster. And Hamster is not the Shambler. So let's see what he can do. Going to go ahead and take one of these workers, put down another Nexus, stuck on just one base to the 3. This Zealot did get 3 worker kills, so that's very nice. But unfortunately for Veeq, he's not really able to... unfortunately for Hamster, wasn't able to do enough. You're talking about 20 worker deficit right now. We do have an Atreus coming out of the Grand Library, a couple of them. That's going to be much needed splash damage. And just his posturing over here is actually spooking Veeq a little bit. He's going to refocus, and he is going to go in for an attempted surround. Remember, no Vorver cores have been added just yet. And so this is going to be a pretty brutal attack, it feels like. But the Lekizalisks never ended up burrowing. Now some workers have made their way over here. That's a little bit of a flub. Looks like Veeq's macro getting the better of him, up to, right now, what is 6 hatches, as well as most of the tech that you have available. All that he's missing is the ski back. Now, 2 isolated Lekizalisks do end up getting felled. We do have a horde of Vorvs starting to be made over here, and now we are going to see the Drakodins. Unfortunately, that's 3 of them dead in one shot. A little bit awkward with the pacing. Another one ends up dying. Now here comes the Zoryustaleth. Still no reveal of the Hydras just yet. We're not seeing any tech from that. But the Vorvs are going to slow them down. That's going to allow the Lekizalisks to position a little bit better. I don't know where the Witness is, if it's still at the army. Here it is. Okay, back at the ramp. So that's still going to work out just fine. And again, the Atreus coming online couldn't be a better time for this situation. I think Veeq should have probably spent a lot of his Vespene, not on Lekizalisks at this point, because it is all Striders, but just mass Hydra. Hydra Vorv would have been very, very effective in this situation, and the Zoryus, obviously, they helped out pretty well too. You can kind of pair the Zoryus with the Vorv to get what the Vorv used to have, which is acceleration towards its victims. When the Zoryus attacks something, it actually applies a debuff, and then all units approaching that target will indeed be provided. There you go. You saw a bunch of Vorvs get canceled so you can get 10 Hydras. Now this force is moving across. A very, very low saturation in the natural. It feels like Hamster could be in charge of, destroying this third. He might then have a little bit of tempo over here, but I think it's just a matter of time before those Hydras pop. It really feels quite difficult for him to get anything done. The Atreus's have fallen, so it's all going to be Drakodins, and the Lekizalisks getting a lot of damage thanks to their expanded range. Right now, Hamster is probably cursing this man, but Darkened Fantasies is responsible for helping me figure out why the Lekizalisks weren't benefiting from range advantage and fixing it. So thank Mr. DF if your name is Veeq7, and also if you just like Lekizalisks in general. Starting to take that 1 o'clock base, at least thinking about it, moving as Droleth over there. You can see on the minimap, Witness spotting additional units, sees the Hydras, must be thinking to himself, Hamster, what are you going to do versus all these Hydras? And yeah, the Atreuses are going to be great for shredding out the Zets, but that is going to be GG. The Hydra Swarm, too good, and Veeq will take the series dub. But hey, we've got one more game, So stay tuned and find out how this exciting series ends. Is it going to be another situation where Hamster's only got one win? Or is he going to strike back and punch Veeq right in his 7? Well, you're going to have to find out. And you're going to also want to join the Discord server so you can play with these guys or maybe participate in some of the co-op and custom stuff we've got. Either way, we'll see you next time. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a Cosmonarchy cast. I hope you guys are doing well. This one might be over sooner, might be over later, but it's our last stop in the Purgatory before we move on to another exciting set of games. I hope you guys are enjoying seeing what the project is turning into, where we have larger scale armies, more interesting tech options, and definitely some exciting games out of some high level players, at least relative to our little set, our little corner of the universe. And Hamster is once again going to be in that bottom right spot. Veeq in the top left. Yellow. Oh, here's the moment of truth. Here's the moment of truth. Is this? Dude, I honestly have no idea. Electric blue? No, Palatinic blue. I'm a failure. Sorry, guys. Well, at least I got the blue part right. So we have Veeq in the top left. If you guys don't know what I was doing, I'm just looking at one of the 108 or whatever colors that we have for player colors, and you can hold shift on the armor to reveal many stats and indeed the color. The pylon first, right by the Nexus, seems to be going the way of Hamster. Again, this is something that we were thinking about doing, and unfortunately it's like a lot of code to deal with because we don't have the source code for Starcraft, so anything you see invented here, created here, provided here is all because of the hard work of myself, Veeq7, Darkened Fantasies, Iquare, may he rest in peace, and Knave from way back in the day, and many others, built on the shoulders of, I wouldn't say giants, but, some cool people anyway. And, of course, with the contributions of many, a community member. In fact, some people don't know this, but the details about like the tooltips and stuff actually stem from contributions from Balethal way back when he was working on GPTP. That's like ancient history now. And there's the pylon block. Oh my god, he's so cheeky. Going for it again. Hamster. Of course, if this game was a qualifying series or something, Veeq would have already won, but it's not a playoff series. It's just some games, right? There's actually 6 games played, but unfortunately we haven't fixed this pernicious issue where if you play a replay and then you pause it in the game, like in the game it was paused, and then a bunch of chat messages were sent, it overflows a buffer and just crashes the game. So obviously, like what you would do in that situation is probably just not show the replays or fix it so that it doesn't overflow somehow, whatever, because sending a chat message is technically like an action that the game handles for synchronizing over network. Anyway, that's all techno mumbo jumbo, but all you need to know is that anyway, that 6th game is unfortunately not operational, but maybe we'll fix it in time for the game to still be relevant, and then I'll go back and watch it. But we'll see. I'm not sure how good it even was. You never know. You never know what you're going to get in games like these. We actually have Veeq going the StarCraft 2 strategy of expanding in his 3rd. This is also something that you'll sometimes see in Brood War, admittedly, but normally you don't take a 3rd base as fast in Cosmonarchy, at least so far. The Droleth has indeed scouted. Zealot is going to step on it, evict it from its hole. Legionnaire coming as well. And a 2nd gate is operational. So no expansion coming. The 2-gate play, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if these units end up moving across the map. We do have another hatch in the base. We've got some quasis coming. I don't know if the scribe actually scouted the pool. I assume it did while I was blabbing about other things. You can see it returning home hero, a war hero, having taken 30 damage and dealt 30 damage. That's 3 with a 0, of course. And then another 3 and another 0. But we do have Legionnaires coming over here. I guess there's not really a move out because Hamster wants to take his natural. The quasis are now pocketed behind the base. I think Veeq expects to need to, defend himself. It's kind of awkward because if they show up over here, I guess the hatch is pretty full HP, right? So he can just respond by attacking, but that would be pretty tricky. Like if I was in Hamster's shoes and I somehow I had the 6th sense to know that my opponent was doing that, I could obviously send like 2 zealots over here and then park the rest of my units on this side, and then when they attack, just feed on in and then attack them over here. Maybe your pylon would even see them leave, right? So there's like a lot of things you might be able to do. Now we do have a scribe joining the army of 3 legionnaires, 3 zealots. Oh, there's a 4th legionnaire on the way, so it's not exactly 2 3s yet again because that would be too much simulation. Embassy on the way. I'm not sure I like Veeq's position here. He has no static defense on either spot, and his choice to not just kill the pylon or do an in-base hatch like he did in game 1 is kind of puzzling, and we'll see if he ends up making it out. One of the things that I always try to do in these sorts of games is I don't really throw shade at players as much as I used to, where it's, thinking like, oh yeah, this doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? Because a lot of these games are more casual, like practice. Like, let's see what we can do. And right now, it looks like it's going to be a counterattack instead of trying to defend the hatch, and you can even see there a bunch of Zets hatched, and unfortunately just immediately got eviscerated. We've got more and more units flooding across the map. Looks like these Zets are going to return home, and a lot of static defense being added. Okay, well, we do have a Warden coming. Some units are rallying over here. I guess Hamster must have thought, okay, there must be like some kind of counterattack happening over here. He's going to scrunch up all of his scribes and see if he can do something over here as more and more Legionnaires pop out. Trying to focus down the pylon. We do have redundancy pylons coming online. That'll instantaneously repower them. Legionnaires teleporting over the gateways to jump on top of the Zets. And I feel like there's not enough quasis here to really turn the screws and hurt this. Meanwhile, well, at the same time, the circuits are up. So this is kind of dangerous here. Veeq doesn't have as many workers as his opponent. He does have a lot more quasis. And the Warden finishing, it's kind of problematic because you can't really do anything in this situation with the quasis, right? You can deny some mining time, obviously, but here come the Legionnaires. They're going to actually fall back. You can see just how fast the quasi stocks can rise. Trying to snipe this pylon. That's not going to do too much. Sniping the other one, however, is going to be a bigger deal. And yeah, the Legionnaires are going to be able to take care of this now. No big deals whatsoever, actually. Unfortunately, he does end up losing another Legionnaire. The Zealots have also made the march back home. This pylon's still there, blocking another expansion. And now, with the minerals being so poorly optimized here for the harvesting, Veeq is going to go ahead and kill one of these Kagrants. Not harvested any bit of gas yet. Interesting. All right, well, it's a bloodbath, a bloody match. I feel like the resultant A move, especially with the loss of that circuit, is going to be really, really rough. Now we see Veeq going to go ahead and deal with this pylon. But this is a lot of units, right? There wasn't enough damage dealt to, like lasting damage dealt to Hamster's economy. The mining was shut down for a little bit. But he kind of needed to be able to shut down this Warden. That one Warden, by the way, 160 damage. It's a way bigger story than that sounds, because there were just so many units there. And there's no tech units, right? There's no Hydrith. There's no Lakizalisk or anything. The embassy's also done, so a witness would be purchased here. And this is an interesting arc, but unfortunately there's just too much muscle here. I think Hamster's got this game for sure. He is, at minimum, going to force a cancel on this. We do have 2 hatch in the base, but there's just so many. What can the quasis do in this situation? GG is called. And you know what, boys? It was a nice and quick and dirty match this time around. But yeah, I guess we'll just end up adding this as an addendum to the previous video. So don't mind the intro to this segment where I was blabbing about some nonsense. And just enjoy the fact that we had another game between these two individuals trying and practicing different strategies, seeing what they can accomplish. GG's all around, Hamster and Veeq. They are cool guys. You too can play against them if you want to by joining our Discord server, getting the project installed, and signing up, you know, logging into our Radmin, all that stuff. So obviously, a lot of news coming soon, a lot of exciting updates to the project coming soon. Of course, another tournament on the horizon. We'll see you guys very, very soon for more matches. GG's.